Well, for more on the latest in terms of the Mop-up operations in KwaZulu-Natal, we're now joined by SABC News senior reporter Ayanda Mhlongo. Ayanda, thanks very much indeed for joining us. This death toll is rising, people still missing. Tell us a little bit more about the Premier's press briefing a little earlier today.
A very good evening, Peter, and good evening to our viewers. Peter, the Premier of the province giving an update in terms of government assessment of the damage and destruction. Of course, also an update on the interventions and the relief from both government and the private sector. The Premier, Peter, reiterating the President's description of this disaster, saying, of course, that this is the worst disaster to have hit the province of KwaZulu-Natal, which has, Peter, necessitated that the provincial government, after it held a special cabinet meeting earlier on today, requested to the national government that they reconsider the state of a disaster and instead declare it a national disaster. This, according to the Premier, will allow for more resources to be allocated to the province, and more departments then will be able to come through and provide assistance. Peter, the Premier also touching, of course, on very key departments, the Department of Health, the Department of Education, and the Department of Housing. As you know, yesterday we have been reporting that around 58 hospitals had been damaged by the floods. Currently today from the Education Department, we're told that 551 schools have been affected, and 98 of these schools will need mobile classrooms, as the damage to those schools is quite severe. And then, of course, Peter, possibly even more pressing is the housing situation, that thousands of people have been left destitute. Just here in the eThekwini Metro, we know that over 40,000 people have been displaced. Thousands of homes are completely damaged. Others were partially damaged. And the Premier saying that attention is also going to be given to people that are living in dangerous areas. And by this meaning people are living along rivers, that they need to be immediately removed from those areas. Of course, Peter, the Premier also speaking about the aid that has already been provided. Non-government organizations that we know since Monday, or since Tuesday rather, have been in the province and visiting affected areas, providing much needed relief in terms of food, blankets, mattresses, and clothes to the thousands of people that have lost absolutely everything that they owned. Of course, in terms of the extent of the damage and the cost, Peter, expected to run into billions of rands. At this point, the government unable to give an exact figure. We know that the destruction to roads and other infrastructure stands at 5.6 billion rand. But there has been, of course, a commitment from the Department of Housing, for example, that is going to allocate R1 billion towards the housing and reconstruction of houses. The President as well earlier on having announced that R1 billion will also be set aside for emergency relief. The Premier stressing, Peter, the need for more assistance and saying that, of course, while the assessments have been continuing, there's still other areas that they still need to get to. So certainly the situation, Peter, on the ground remains dire, and a call for more assistance for the people of this province. Peter?
All right, a dire situation. Ayanda, this is your province. The Premier says that he's never seen anything like this before. Is that your experience? I guess it's pretty difficult to see the scenes that are playing out this past week.
Yeah, certainly, Peter. In all the years that one has been reporting, and I mean in our office alone, we've got camera people and other journalists that have been reporting for years. And no doubt this has been the worst type of devastation that we have seen. I mean, just the magnitude of this, Peter, the different areas. Somebody will ask us which area is worst affected, and at this point, really, we can't say because the destruction is it's unbelievable, Peter. These are areas that we would report in. These are people that we would speak to often on a regular basis, roads that we travel on almost every single day. And just to see the amount of destruction and devastation is just unbelievable, Peter. Worse, it's the suffering. The people that we have interacted with over the past couple of days who have lost absolutely everything. And just a really, really heartbreaking scenes, Peter, of people who are risking their own lives now, going into rivers, into areas where there's been mudslides, really dangerous areas in search of their loved ones. The desperation, the despair, one can't even describe it, Peter. It certainly has been one of the most difficult and most challenging stories that we've had to cover as journalists in this province.
Resources is a word that keeps coming up, and I'm sure that, again, from what you're seeing on the ground, there's just so much to be done, and sadly, not enough hands, not enough equipment, not enough resources.
Yeah, certainly, Peter. The extent of the damage is quite extensive. And, we've been focusing mostly in the eThekwini metro, which has been the worst affected. But we know that there are several other districts, including Ugu district, Ilembe district, Gungunzovu, and the King Cetshwayo district. Some of these areas, Peter, we have attempted to get to, but have been unable to because bridges have been washed away. There are sinkholes in roads, and we just aren't able to get to all these areas. And this is the same for emergency services as well on the ground. Another challenge, Peter, that we know that it's now day 6, and we have people that are still without electricity, people that are still without water, and people that are in desperate need of a supply. In terms of the search and rescue operations as well, as much as there has been additional teams that have come out from other provinces, namely Limpopo. We are told the team is on its way, but we already have rescuers that have come from the Western Cape and the Free State. However, it's just not enough. They've just got too much ground to cover, and communities in different areas calling out to us to say, please, we have been ignored, we don't have an assistance yet. If people can, please come through and search for our missing loved ones. And in terms of aid as well, Peter, I mean, just 40,000 people in the eThekwini metro alone. That just tells you how much assistance people need. In some areas, Peter, community halls, schools, churches have all now been full. And there is a desperate need of space, of more shelter for people. We also know that schools are expected to open on Tuesday, and a lot of these people are going to have to be removed from these schools to allow teaching and learning to continue. So certainly there is a cry for assistance, and while there is been, NGOs that have been coming through and doing amazing work on the ground, they too have said that there are a lot more people need to come through and provide assistance, because it's only a scratch on the surface, as one NGO has said, of the work that they've been doing, and calling upon other organizations, both here in South Africa and abroad, to bring in much needed aid and resources. Peter?
I suppose 6 days on, it's getting harder and harder to keep hope alive for those that are missing, that people are searching for, and hoping that they're still alive.
Yes. Definitely, Peter. It's really difficult. The pain and suffering of these family members. In fact, my colleague Visi Kumalo this afternoon was speaking to one of the victims or family member of a person that has drowned, and he came out and said that they appreciate the work that the search and rescue teams are doing, and that they hope that they will be able to find their family members, but they're losing hope. Many of the people now, Peter, understand that their loved ones have possibly passed on, and all they want to do now is to bury their loved ones. As the Premier said there, 63 people are still unaccounted for and reported missing. But this number in itself, Peter, if I take from the different communities that I visited and my colleagues as well, this number really seems to be quite low. I mean, there's some areas where we're told that about 80 homes were washed away. All of these homes had, there were people inside, up to 4 or 5 people. So if you do those calculations, the number of people that are missing is far greater than the number that we have. But of course, we are going for now with the official number. But I must say, Peter, the search and rescue teams are doing all that they can, risking their lives. And very sadly, as we know, this afternoon, the National Police Commissioner confirming that 2 police officers and a K9 have died, as they were, the one police officer died while conducting a search in the Msunduzi River, and sadly another police officer, constable, died when her home collapsed. But police officers are out and about, not only the rescue teams, Peter, that are doing everything they can under very, very dangerous and difficult conditions to try and find at least the bodies of these people that have gone missing. But officers are also out and about ensuring the safety of other citizens, clearing people away from areas that have been said to be dangerous, from these low-lying areas as well, on the roads as well in terms of visibility. So, a great deal of effort from the police officers, but Peter, from the community members, they are indeed losing hope. But what they're saying is that they at least want to be able to bury their loved ones. Peter?
Ayanda, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much indeed. That's SABC senior news reporter Ayanda Mhlongo describing one of the most difficult stories that she's had to cover in her career. So many people have passed away in these floods, and still so many missing as well.